I need it is when we're down here in committees, because the blowers are over there. I appreciate it. I really do. I didn't see it. In fact, it was the first thing I noticed when I sat down.
We're going to get started. Hey, Malik. Yeah. Is your son old enough to do the pledge? I don't know if he would know the pledge. Cameron, do you know the Pledge of Allegiance? No? Well, you heard what he said. Shanae said, no, that's my boyfriend. And he said, no, I want her.
You want to go over there or you want to stay here?
No, I wouldn't check it out.
Let's go here.
Very high. Yeah, but the launch.
No, you're going to go back and sit there when you're done with the pledge, okay? You're going to do the pledge with her.
We're going to go down in front.
I'm a simple.
Yes. We miss you. Everybody kept crying.
As usual, we're going to begin our meeting and calling this meeting to order. Today is May the 11th, 2017. As always, we begin our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. We have a very special, well, all of our people who do the pledges are special, but we've got a special partnership forming today. And why don't we stand up? Stand up.
I have to hold it down
waiting for
for
Daddy.
Cynthia.
You want to tell us your name? Tell everybody your name.
Cameron
Cameron, what's your last name, sir?
Evans.
All right. Hey, ma'am, what's your name?
Nick Evans is my father-in-law. So we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance together. You're going to put your hand in your heart. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United
States of America.
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Plus, he thinks I'm 16. He said you are, though.
All right, Cam, you can sit down, sit back. You can sit back there.
Feeling a little lost.
Okay. We did have one speaker who was going to address an agenda item, but he is not here. Is that right? Actually, I spoke to him the other day. Was Cal Harris? That was Clay Harris. Yep. So I don't know. Mr. Evans, did you speak? Commissioner Evans, did you speak to him?
Yeah, I
too?
spoke to him today. He said he was going to be here, actually.
Yeah. So,
But I did tell him that, we were aware of his concerns,
Yep.
and maybe he's not.
So maybe he's not coming today. Okay. All right. So we don't have any speakers addressing an agenda item. Now we're going to consider resolutions. Let's first, can I get a motion to consider or discuss Resolution 702? A motion?
So
That's
moved.
a budget resolution. It's been moved by Commissioner Evans, seconded by Commissioner Cruz. Before we begin taking questions or comments, all I wanted to say is a thank you. I think I saw Everton. There he is, behind Anju. Everton, and I know perhaps other board members, if they don't say it, they're certainly thinking it. But on behalf of the entire board and the Rochester City School District, we want to thank you and your team. We realize, many of us having been through this process many times, we understand the kind of work that goes into it. And if I'm correct, Everton, while you've been involved in many budgets in the past, I think it's the first one that you shepherded and led yourself. Is that right? And you did it in a seamless way, in a way that we saw, I can't recall seeing any hiccups. We really appreciate that effort and that diligence. It is not a difficult thing to be staring down the barrel of a $65 million budget deficit, I think is what it was, and to turn that situation around. It's our obligation to do that statutorily, but having it in the statute is one thing. Being able to do it in the books is another, and we really, really appreciate the effort. Now, I'm directing my comments to you on behalf of the board, but we appreciate the fact that there are many people who work with you, and you could not do this alone. So please communicate to each and every one of those individuals, and if they're listening now, they're probably sleeping. But if they happen to be listening now, and if they're not, please, will you communicate to them our thanks and our appreciation? Thank you. And of course, Superintendent Dean Williams, none of this could happen without you. You just started and did what very superintendents are able to do, which is to manage, or very few leaders are able to do, to manage such a huge budget deficit, and do it with a sense of focus. You talked about priorities in a way that we haven't heard many of our leaders discuss in the past. You talked about complying with statutory basics and making sure our children got what the law requires that they are supposed to get. And for that and for your tireless efforts, again, on behalf of the board, I want to thank you. And again, some of my colleagues may say something. If they choose not to, I know that my comments are reflective of their most sincerest appreciation for your work. So that began the discussion. There may be questions or comments that my colleagues want to share. So the floor is open. Commissioner Adams?
Yep, I also would like to express my appreciation for the massive task and the hard work that went into it. I really appreciate it. I do have a question. It's not about the technical aspects of balancing the budget, but an area that I think was left unclear in terms of budget priorities and a specific ask from the board and from some members of the board and from community partners regarding the pre-kindergarten component of the LEAP program, so like the Horizons and Harley programs, which historically have been well supported by private foundations with relatively small portions of district funding to go along and support. What I think everyone has agreed is a very high quality set of programs with really strong evaluative components, and it follows cohorts of students who have very high rates of retention and do very well in terms of graduation. So it's one of those sort of holy grail type things where we want to see the long-term outcomes, and this is a mechanism that we've seen in the community. So there was a question raised to the board and to you early on from supporters of this, some of the funders, but also some volunteer advocates regarding continued district support for the LEAP programs. And I'm really glad and appreciative that we did come through with supporting the LEAP programs generally. There was the specific pre-K component, which was, that question lagged behind and was raised a few different times. And it was raised at a budget question where we did have some back and forth, and we understand that there is no pre-K grant money or anything other than general funds or A funds that could support a small contribution toward the pre-K component of LEAP. And so that was left as an open question. Could we, spare and prioritize a relatively, modest district contribution to that? So I was really trying to track down the answer to that as late as an hour or two ago, and there was some confusion about whether we were talking about ramp up or LEAP. And so I want to clarify, I'm talking about LEAP, and I would just like, for the record, publicly, what is our rationale for not being able to support that? This is a programmatic question. This is a question of priorities. I mean, it's up to you who you want to answer, but in my opinion, it's really it's a programmatic priority question.
Absence, I'm sorry, of Dr. March this evening, I think that Everton may be the best to answer it. Everton, if not, if there's a team member that would be better able to answer that, that would be appreciated.
No, she left. I saw her leaving.
I withdraw the question because I really don't think it's fair. I mean, Everton has done a fabulous job with the technical aspects of the budget, so
The only reason I asked is because it was my understanding that he did have some programmatic information that he received, and you sent an email, or an email has been sent at this point?
Yes, the email was sent, but in addressing Commissioner Adams' question about the local funding for that. And that's the final, the last email that we just sent. So I was looking for Dr. Hooper to see the rationale behind it from a programmatic point of view, but she had left. So I can personally get that for you when she's back and get that to you. So, you know, the funding, we don't do it with local funds, and we just have to see why and how we could, if we could use any pre-K grant money to fund that.
We can't.
I know we
and that was
can't.
understood.
So we may be able to look at something to see how we can use that, a small amount of general fund to fund that.
Okay.
So we'll look into that.
Thank you very much. And just
I don't think there's a programmatic question, just so you're reassured, there's not a programmatic question. I think there was a question around which funding and how to get it moved, and that's why I asked Everton, because the programmatic and funding side actually do everything together. We didn't separate it this year. We really tried to integrate it so that one move can impact another move, and so we try to get everybody in the room at the same time. So that's why I just asked, but
Right.
we can meet with her tomorrow again and take
Yes,
another
and
look.
I went
Yeah.
to look for her just before this, and she had left, so.
Okay, thank you. And then I just would also like to say, again, you know, global appreciation for the work that has been done. I do feel responsible to point out that in terms of our alternative programs, the ways that we are, the offerings, the instructional quality and the offerings that we are able to support students who are not doing well in the typical classrooms, that would include the constellation of youth and justice programs, but also All City, and also what I've heard and appreciate your vision for Twilight programs or other alternative programs. The set of opportunities and the ability to address the dire crisis of students who are not succeeding in our regular classrooms is not fully fleshed out at this point. It's not adequate, and I would like to support, you know, and I would ask my colleagues to support you in really focusing on that area so that we can get that fleshed out really soon. Thanks.
Before we continue on with the balance of comments, I neglected to mention, but fortunately it's not too late, that this also never would have happened without our Finance Committee that is ably chaired, of course, by Commissioner Cruz. And I would also be neglectful if I did not mention that this is going to be his last finance chair, opportunity to chair the Finance Committee.
He's crying. He's crying. Get him some tissue.
And I know it seems there's not a lot of us in here, but if we could give him a thunderous round of applause. I know he doesn't want that, but he certainly deserves that. And he stepped in there after years of Commissioner Powell chairing that committee, and he didn't really miss a beat. And but we will miss him, because first of all, we're going to have to find somebody to chair that committee. But secondly, you did it so well, and you always, as I tell people, you keep us on cruise control. And that's very difficult to do with the budget. So again, thank you, Commissioner Cruz. And of course, Kalia Wade, I don't think she's here. She's board staff, and she has done, I'm sure Commissioner Cruz will tell you, she has done a great job. We could not do this job as board members. Malik and I are always talking about this is not the kind of thing where you can be here 24/7, but we don't have to be because we have great staff that I see Deborah hanging out there, and of course we have Dr. Lee over here. We have a great staff on the board that helps us keep the train on track. So, I'm sorry, colleagues, any other questions or comments regarding Resolution 702?
No, I just want to say again, thank you to the staff and the superintendent for doing this. I think that it's important for people to have an appreciation of how difficult it is to cut well, I don't even want to say cut, but make adjustments within with the $50 million budget gap, while at the same time being fiscally responsible, while also balancing priorities. So I want to thank everyone for that. And obviously, you can't do everything with what you have, but you try to do your best, and I think we did that this year. Thank you.
Vice President Eliot?
It's a huge budget, and people in the community are going to say to us, as they've always said, and now, you know, it is getting close to $1 billion budget, and we don't seem to be able to educate our children. And so, you know, some of us have really been getting beat upon out in the community. And we've been hearing it from a lot of different venues. People are just tired. People want to make sure that our children are being educated. It's an embarrassment. And so we tend to always seem to raise the money and raise the budget, but we don't seem to be able to educate our children. And so when people say that there's a correlation between funding and academic achievement, I have to question that, because we have not been doing it for the 12 years that I've been here, or we've done it minimally, and not to the extent of the funding that we receive. And we know 70% of this budget is in salaries. And so when, you know, we talk about all these other programs that we need to have, or we can't cut this or we can't cut that, we have to make sure that we know that 70% is under salaries, and there are contractual arrangements that we have. And unless we can get our unions to begin to pull back, in other words, they don't have to have a salary increase every year, or really be able to work with us to educating our students. I don't know where else we can cut, or where else we can have, you know, programs other than within the programs. And so while, you know, there are some programs that may be political, that there are some programs that touch our heart, some programs that may be doing very well. Because we are required to have a balanced budget, in my opinion, nothing is off the table. And so I just want us to be mindful of the fact that people are not giving us money the way they used to. We just can't go to the state and they're going to give us money, because of the fact is that we're not doing what we're supposed to do in educating our kids. And so it's almost as if people are saying, well, you know, we've been given it, but we see very little change. I would argue that if we begin to see more academic achievement, then it becomes an investment and not an expense. Because right now, I believe the community is looking at it as an expense and not as an investment. Because the fact is that it's a bad investment. And so until we begin to make significant changes, not just these, you know, marginal changes, we've got to make significant changes, particularly if we want to see the poverty rate reduced in this community, because clearly there is a correlation between students who are educated and who are career and college ready to the poverty rate. And people want to say that, well, it's the poverty rate that causes a lack of academic achievement. No, not in the African American community, not historically. We got other people who don't know about the African American community and don't know that it was because of poverty. It was because poverty was a motivating factor that our community got educated, so that they would not have to be in poverty. And so when you have other people who don't understand the African American community making these decisions and always saying that they're poor people, they can't do it, that's wrong. And so while I am going to vote in favor of this budget because I have faith in our superintendent, I'm telling you, we're going to get beat up in this community that we got $1 billion budget and we're educating our kids at a 50% graduation rate. Does not make sense. Thank you, Mr. President.
We want to just go down and work our way over? Commissioner Powell?
If that's okay with Commissioner Helmer. Commissioner Eliot, I'm gratified to hear that you will be voting in favor of this budget. The number of times I've tried to bring to light the issues that caused the budget to be inflated, including the facilities modernization program, the local share requirements of the facilities modernization program, the fact that IDEA only provides us about 16% of what's required to educate our special education students when the promise was 40%. The fact that the foundation aid formula that was set in 2007 was abandoned by 2010. All of these things conspire to allow us less flexibility to do the mandated functions. I mean, we could just stop doing the facilities modernization right now. We could. I don't know how much difference it would make because we're already invested in about $400 million in debt, all of which passes through our budget each year in the form of reimbursement requests to pay off the debt that's been incurred and reimbursement payments from the state. So fundamentally, I disagree, Commissioner Eliot, that we are not being good stewards of public dollars in our effort. If everything is on the table, then FMP needs to be on the table. Everything means everything. But I'm gratified to hear that you plan on voting for this budget. If you had chosen otherwise, I would have felt it was my personal failure to make some of the factors seem real and cogent to you. I also want to say that I have complete faith and confidence in our superintendent. I've heard how she has articulated bringing the teams and senior cabinet members to the table to address essentially a zero-based budget, what they need to do the job. Addressing that senior cabinet, I hope and trust that Superintendent Dean Williams' mentorship and leadership have been embraced, and that you will rise to the occasion. You know, the problem with being given an opportunity to succeed is it comes with the opportunity to fail, and it is possible to fail, and I hope that each of you will invest yourselves personally in our success and in working together as a team to guarantee that success. I've personally stayed at a distance from the issues. I've not been as much an advocate this year as I have in past years for specific programs, because I want this to be your budget, Dr. Dean Williams's budget. I want to see this work, and as hard as it is to sit on my hands and say, yeah, but what about, I'm choosing not to do that. I want you to own this, and I hope that you all do. And that you'll lay awake at night thinking about how to make it succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bell. Commissioner Hallmark?
All right, I just wanted to express my heartfelt thanks for the hard work that went into this budget. I know you guys were just working so hard at this. It's been a very smooth process. I feel like all of our questions were answered. The priorities, we kept circling back around to our priorities. Everything just felt very clear and smooth and well-oiled, and I simply wanted to express my appreciation for that. I'm happy and excited about the priorities that the superintendent has been discussing and that we've all been supporting, especially the social emotional and the professional development focus. And I know that the team, the cabinet team has clearly gotten closer and, working together very well, and I appreciate that because I know that when we have a strength in our relationships together, that filters down through the entire district. So I appreciate your work. Thanks.
And certainly last but not least, Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, for those kind words. I will, this has been a great experience for me in terms of the budget, and I could not have done that without Commissioner Powell's help and guidance and mentorship. So I appreciate that, and thank you very much. I, too, want to join the board in thanking the staff. We saw some pretty haggard staff out there over the last couple weeks. No sleep, some bags under their eyes, hair a little disheveled and things like that. But it speaks to the kind of magnitude of trying to put together a $900 million budget and the implications of that. So, so I really want to thank Everton and his staff for putting this together. It's think about it. If you think about the staff that started this process and the staff that finished this process, they're almost all different.
That's true.
And to do it halfway through the process has to be one of the most difficult things you can do. And you did it with grace, and you did it with class and commitment to what this work is all about. So on behalf of the Finance Committee, we appreciate it. And I want to thank the members of the Finance Committee for going through this process and really taking heart in terms of trying to figure out a budget that really works for this district. I want to thank the stakeholders. We couldn't have done it without our stakeholders, without our partners, the bargaining units. Commissioner Eliot was talking about giving a little. There was some giving. There was a little bit of giving, which was pretty substantial. So at the end, we want to thank them as well. Again, the board generated over, about 150 questions over this process. They were generated with 3 days' notice and 3 days' response time, and those answers came back. Sometimes not as clear as we would like them to be, but for the grand majority of them, they came back and they did a great job of explaining what it is we were going to do. And so, again, that process is a tough process when you get that many questions over such a very short period of time. Different from prior years, I'll tell you, some of us remember 5 or 6 years ago when we were sitting here, and at one point we had an $80 million deficit and had no clue as to what we were going to do. And there were hundreds of people who lost their jobs during that year. And if you think things are quiet now, imagine back then when we had that many people we had to let go. And from all different walks of life in terms of our community. So this last couple of years has been very different. Especially this year, it's been very smooth. You can tell by the number of speakers we've had at our budget hearings. We had 2 community hearings on the budget. We've had other community presentations on the budget. We have 3 board deliberations, all asking questions, all specifically. And one of the comments that I heard from one of the audience one evening was, they really appreciated that the board took the time to understand what it is that was in the budget and were asking good, thoughtful, critical questions. And so that meant a lot. And then what the budget represents this year, redeployment of staff from central office, getting them back into the classrooms, phenomenal stuff. More support for social and emotional challenges that our children are facing. Support for the restorative justice program, increasing it year by year, making sure that kind of resource is available to our kids. Continued support for literacy. We've got summer jobs in this budget. I think there's 120 children will have summer jobs as a result of what we're doing here at the district and then with our partnership with City Hall. Grants. One of the lifebloods of our budget are grants. The grant staff in this district generates over $110 million in grants, which is about 8% of our district revenues. That's phenomenal, considering how hard it is sometimes to go out there and get extra cash. We appreciate the state increases. We always want more. They can do more. They should do more. And hopefully in the years they will do more. And we don't want to get into the conversation about what's due us because of the contract for justice. but I'll mention that for you, Commissioner Parks. I know you always talk about that. We've had decreases in administrative salary, novel ideas. Here's a novel idea. Somebody said, why not lease buses as opposed to buying them, right? As a result of that, we're going to save $400,000, $500,000. By leasing buses, our kids will have new buses every single year. We don't have to worry about the maintenance and all those kinds of things. And all with a small ding to our contingency fund. So I think all in all, it's a phenomenal budget. I'm just proud that we were part of it and that your staff has done a phenomenal job of delivering to us what we think is a great blueprint going into for this coming year and going into next year's. I think you're building a great foundation for potentially some things that are going to happen over the next couple of years. And ultimately, you took the board serious in terms of some of its recommendations, and that's always appreciated. So again, thank you. It's somewhat long-winded, but I just wanted to make sure that we pointed these things out because I think that's what makes this budget very unique in terms of what we've done and what we're doing as a district for our children. So again, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Barbara, did you want to make any remarks?
So thank you, President White. I just want to reiterate the thanks to the staff. This year, in addition to going line by line, we did everything together as a team. So the finance and the program teams made every decision jointly. We continued to meet and meet again so that we made sure that the decisions that were being made about each detail of the budget were made together, because every time one group would decide they needed an addition, it meant another group had to be willing to give something up. And being part of those conversations, we guided those through values in terms of doing what we thought represented the best model for our students with the funds that we have. We know that in the future we're going to have to become more entrepreneurial. We have begun to plant the seeds for a greater and larger capacity to be entrepreneurial in our approaches. We've begun to seek some grant funding that would allow us to build out some of our programs in the future so that we can become more self-sustaining in the areas of professional learning for our leaders and our teachers. So we think as we're able to make some of those significant programmatic improvements over the next 3 to 5 years, that will position ourselves to be a little more responsive to the needs of our students. So appreciate also all of the members of the board. Your questions, again, while they go to individuals to be responded to, they are again reviewed by the team so that we can give each other feedback and we can all learn and grow from the experience. So we want to thank you for the opportunity to be part of this process, and we do believe that we have delivered a budget that focuses not just on remediation, but acceleration and support for all students, including those students that need greater challenges to graduate from high school and have the optimal opportunities to be competitive in the job market and for their future careers. So we, again, thank you for that.
And we have, as you all know, a unique sort of governance structure here at Rochester City School District. We have 2 superintendents, and although East High School's budget is a very, very, very small portion of the overall budget, we want to thank Dr. Nelms and his team. Sean, I'll have to ask you the same thing that I've asked other folks. I'm not going to get everybody's name. You please make sure that you communicate our appreciation and our thanks. And I wanted to extend to you, I know it's sort of catching you off guard, but if you wanted to make some comments, you're more than welcome to do that. Okay. But again, on behalf of the board, we appreciate your work that you all do, and again, communicate that thanks to your entire team. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, I beg your indulgence. Our speaker came in after we began our comments, but we want to make sure before we vote we hear from him. Mr. Clay Harris, Mr. Harris, did you want to?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Sorry for my tardiness. I was only 3 minutes late. Last time I was here, there wasn't even a quorum for the board to get started. It was like 6:20. So I thought 2 minutes would make too much of a difference. But I just wanted to come here. My name is Clay Harris, for those who do not know me. And I'm coming to speak on behalf of OASIS. And I know most of the boards and administrators have been aware of the advocacy board that was born out of the cuts from last fiscal year. And we have been very busy over this past year trying to advocate some additional funding and the restoring of the funding for OASIS, for the vocational programs, and in particular also the youth program. Before I go any further, I want to thank Dr. Williams and the board who were able to help us out to get some restoring, as well as Fatima and Sandra. Really appreciate you guys' effort. The youth program is very dear to me because a couple reasons. One, I didn't know about OASIS. I was talking to Reverend Lewis Stewart about helping me with a Stop the Violence committee that I had developed to stem the violence in the community. And he said, well, I'll help you with this, Clay, if you help me with another issue that we're dealing with, and that was OASIS. And once I learned about it, I became extremely committed to see that it gets restored. And the point being is that the youth of 16 to 20 is still much children, even though in the eyes of the law, to a certain extent, 18, you become an adult. But up until 20, there is still responsibility for the district to educate those young folk, those students. We've had a significant dropout rate in the Rochester City School District for decades, and it's compounding the problem within the family structure because a lot of these young people are having kids and they're not educated, so they don't have the wherewithal, many of them, to educate their own children, so it becomes a cycle, a perpetual negative cycle, and it becomes a dependency on the system, as well as issues with violence, incarceration, drug abuse, and etc. And there was, we do appreciate the $544K that was put into the budget this year. We really do appreciate that. Last year, it was only 60 students. Since I only one speaker, let me get a couple extra minutes, please. So last year, only 60 students got help. Traditionally, it's about 400 of those students to get help. We have thousands of these students that are languishing out in the community, that some of them are beginning to see the light, and some of them still need to be prodded to see the light, to get back into school and to get their education. And I think it's our job, and particularly the board's job, to try to get those young folk, 16 to 20, back in, and OASIS is a great vehicle for them to do it, and it's almost some of the only vehicles that is left in the community. So I'm urging you guys, and 14 and 15 fiscal year, it was 1.2 million that was in the budget, and then it got cut down to 200 and some odd thousand. Now again, this year, 544,000 from 60 students to maybe about 180. But to get back up to the number, which is still not sufficient enough to cover the dropout rate, and for us to entice them in to get back into the educational system so that they can be productive citizens in society, I need the board, the superintendent, to understand and to realize the importance of what we're losing out in society. And we complain about so much of the violence and et cetera, and a lot of it has to do with the lack of education. So again, the advisory board is going to be here. We're going to advocate not just for OASIS, but for other programs that hopefully will instill into these young people to get an education, and then not just the secondary education, but post-education and go to college. And I think society will be much better off if we can do that. So with that said, thank you for the extra time. And if we can increase that 544 somehow, it would be greatly appreciated, and it is much needed. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Any further questions or comments? There being none, we'll begin to take a vote. We're going to need to take a roll call vote. So I'll begin with Commissioner Powell.
My vote is yes.
Commissioner Hallmark.
Yes.
Vice President Eliot.
Yes.
Commissioner Evans. Commissioner Cruz.
Yes.
Commissioner Adams.
Yes.
And my vote is yes as well. Madam Clerk, you recorded that vote? Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to discuss Resolution 703?
So moved.
Been moved by Commissioner Evans, seconded by Vice President Eliot. Let me begin by making some very brief remarks. I want to, again, thank, I'm going to just mention one or two people, and then, again, my ask is that you share the board's thanks, or at least certainly my thanks. Anju, I'll begin with you. And, of course, you'll communicate my thanks to President Battle as well. A lot of people put a lot of work into this, and again, I'm not going to go by names, but some of you folks know who you are already, and you're not looking for personal recognition. I'm sure you're looking for the progress that every board member here is seeking for our children. And those people include people in central office who worked on this plan that is part of this resolution that we're discussing today. It includes staff members at number 19 school. They certainly have spent a lot of time, even before this plan was even thought of, developing something that could make a difference in the lives of children. And then finally, I want to, and certainly last but not least, I want to thank staff from central office. You know who you are. You're sitting in here too. This was not an easy task. And then, this truly is finally. Members of the Board of Education who, specifically led by Commissioner Evans, who shepherded this thing through a series of committee meetings. Tough questions were asked. There's still many questions that perhaps aren't answered at this particular point. I think everybody who's been involved will say there's much work to be done. But as you have seen through some of the ESA meetings, there's been some significant progress. So, again, a round of thanks. And again, that's not a premature thanks, because no matter what happens in the vote, you all have put a lot of work into this, and it has truly been appreciated. And I need to say one other thing that I think is important. And one of the major reasons why I know I and I think some other board members were attracted to this idea, and again, I'm not going to call out names, but you know, this is a very organic idea. This is a very organic process. And when I began with other folks talking about this, you know, we were thinking about East High School and the EPO there. But what folks need to realize, this is totally different. This is not a clone of East High School by any stretch, not by the dollar amount, not by the model of leadership. It is entirely different. And one of the things that's very different about this is this was not born out of a crisis, really. Dr. Nelms and others associated with East High School will tell you, and my colleagues will tell you, that was really born out of a crisis. We really had to do something. While 19 school is a school that the state is looking at and is very concerned about, it certainly did not have the challenges that East High School had when the board took that giant step a few years ago. This idea, actually, I call it organic, really began, and again, I'm not going to mention names, you know who you are, it began with some teachers trying to do something several years ago. And what is really important about this is that when they tried to do it, they had results, and then you know how things go. The budget ran out, and priorities changed, and leaders changed, and the project that they had started that people had promised they would grow didn't grow because the leadership changed and priorities changed. But to their credit, they hung in there, they had an idea, and the idea was to improve the outcomes for our children. And again, to those people, with all due respect, Anju, you are the beneficiary, Dr. Battle, we are the beneficiaries of those teachers' hard work. And I hope my colleagues realize this isn't just about trying to improve outcomes. It is. Primarily, that's what this is about. But this is also about recognizing that we have leaders in this community that aren't elected, that care as much as we do, quite frankly, maybe even more than we do, about these kids because they see them every day. And I just want to tell you, no matter what the outcome of the vote, I want to tell you your work is appreciated, truly appreciated, and we thank you for that. And I know you don't always feel that way. And for your colleagues that are listening, teachers out there, cafeteria ladies, paraprofessionals, sentries, your work is appreciated. And you should take as much joy in the fact that we recognize your worth as leaders as we recognize the worth of the staff members who are here today that helped to make this happen. Any other questions or comments on Resolution 703, which I don't even know if I took a, yes, we did. Any other questions or comments regarding Commissioner Hallmark?
Yeah, sure, I could say something. So I'll be honest and say that I have kind of mixed feelings about EPOs. On the one hand, it could be considered sort of breaking off a piece of the district and handing it off. But on the other hand, you can look at it as, you know, welcoming partnerships with the broader community. And so, as I said, I have some mixed feelings about this. I appreciate the expertise that Geneseo is bringing into this, and I want good partnerships. I want to invite partnerships with the broader community. I wouldn't want to see 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 EPOs. So I'll just put that out. And I hope this will be done carefully and mindfully and thoughtfully, and that we will have good communication with each other, because that's at the heart of good partnerships. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Hallmark. Anybody else? We're good? All right, so we don't need a roll call for this. All those in favor of Resolution 703, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? The ayes have it. I want you to know, in my faith and in my service, there's this thing called claiming the victory before it even happened. So I went to SUNY Geneseo and I bought this sweatshirt. And I want to thank my colleagues, and again, we want to thank the staff and the folks at SUNY Geneseo. You will communicate that to them as well. Anju, thank you. All right, I think, Madam Clerk, we have to go into executive session. I need a motion to go into executive session. I move, yes, Commissioner Evans, we do have to go into executive session. Are you making that motion? Is that growing? Growl that? Okay. Moved by...
I make a motion to go to executive session for litigation purposes.
Oh, no, yeah, absolutely.
Possible litigation purposes.
Steve, they even got ahead of me. There's been a motion to go into executive session for litigation purposes to discuss a possible litigation. Is it seconded? Second by Vice President Eliot. All those in favor say aye. For those of you who are interested, we're going to adjourn from downstairs after we come out of executive session. Other than that, you can go home and watch, what is it coming on tonight? Scandal. 9 o'clock. Good night, everybody.